Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. Today's video is going to be a roundup of all the latest news in the game of Dragalia Lost. There's been a lot this week despite the Fire Emblem rerun just starting, and most important of all I think is that we have a surprise Gala Dragalia banner. We have our first Gala Dragon given a rate up as part of that, Gala Mars. So in this video, we're going to be discussing that. I'll try to give the best summoning advice I can give on that topic. We're also going to take a look at Ciella's Wrath, the new Agito Uprising trial, since we got some more information about that, including a release date as well as a gameplay trailer that was posted over on Twitter. So we'll discuss that, and afterward, we'll briefly mention the version update that is planned for next week. This is something that got kind of buried in all of the Fire Emblem rerun news, but I do want to give it its time in the sun, since I think the version updates always contain some nice quality of life features, as well as some hints at the future direction of the game. Finally, I will double back on the Mana Spirals conversation about Fjorm, Marth, Veronica, and Alphonse, since at the time I recorded my last video on the Mana Spirals, we didn't yet know the damage modifiers for their skills. Now that that information is known, and there's been some time to actually play with these characters in harder endgame content, I think there's more of a clear verdict that we can form around them, so I will briefly talk about that at the end of this video. Let's start today, though, with Gala Mars, as I think the decision about whether to summon is probably fresh on a lot of people's minds. This Gala Dragalia showcase kind of came out of nowhere, because in the past, the messaging around Gala showcases has always been that they typically come out around every 2 months or so. This time, we only had a month between the release of Gala Alex and now the release of Gala Mars. Because this is a dragon, the focus appearance rate is 0.8%. That's good. That's higher than the adventurer focus, which starts at 0.5%, even on these galas. And if you're not familiar with gala showcases, these are showcases that happen in the past once every 2 months, but perhaps now we'll start to see them every single month, where you have a heightened chance of getting 5-star adventurers, and some Gala units are available as part of the summoning pool when they're not normally in your permanent banners otherwise. So Gala is a good time to summon if you want to increase the amount of Eldwater you have, or try for just 5 stars in general. You might pick up characters who have been on recent banners, since there's not really like a statute of limitations type of thing. They're usually going to include all of the latest characters when the Gala comes out. So it's a good time to try pick up characters. Having said that, the summoning pool is pretty large, so you can't anticipate that you're going to pull a particular character off focus on these, but you just do get a lot of random 5 stars. On normal showcases, after 100 summons, your next summon is guaranteed to be a 5-star, so you have kind of like a final pity breaker system that you can't go more than 101 summons without a 5-star. On Gala, because the rates are heightened to start at a 6% rate for 5 stars in total, that final pity breaker actually happens at 61 summons. So within about 60 summons, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a 5-star. So Galas have a lot of value if you're a newer player. It's a really good way to round out your collection with some powerful dragons, adventurers. The more that you've played the game, I think that Galas start to look a little bit more dubious, I guess you could say. On one hand, you know, these normal showcases that come around, the characters in them, if it's not a seasonal showcase, they're going to get added to the permanent pool. You could always pick them up later, but with how saturated the permanent pool is at this point, often if you don't try pick up some of these focus characters when they first come out, you really have to not want them at all, because your chance of getting them later on, while possible, is just going to be pretty low. I don't think you could count on getting them later on, except through a targeted summon, like a dream summon that does happen occasionally. So Galas are kind of an interesting space. They haven't really confirmed whether this is going to happen every month, but I really could see this becoming an every month thing, alternating between adventurers and dragons. We know this dragon, Gala Mars, is associated with one of our siblings, Leonidas, And we have two of the other dragons tied to our siblings that have been revealed so far in the story. We know that Valix is pact bound with Thor, and we also know that Chell has her dragon, Kate Sith. So it's possible they could easily continue this at least 2 more times with Gala dragons. I think it's a good thing to have more Gala showcases because these are really good entry points if you're new to the game. This is a high value showcase, and so having those happen more frequently during the year hopefully means whenever you're starting the game, there's going to be good showcases to summon on. It's also probably a good thing for their revenue, to be completely honest, because players do like to spend to get these Gala and powerful characters. That being said, I know there's probably some concern about the amount of showcases. We'd already seen a precedent where more and more showcases were getting split into Part 1 and Part 2, even when the amount of new units in the past could have been contained in one showcase. So this seems like a broader push to try and improve the game's monetization. It's not great, but devs gotta eat, so I don't really have a strong sentiment on that. I wish that the showcases weren't split, and that because of how good a quality game it is, that it could still receive the revenue that it needs to survive. But I really don't know, so I can't really comment too much on that, except to say, for me, I think on net, having Gala every month is a good thing if that's what ends up shaking out. As for Gala Mars himself, I will probably skip on this showcase. And my reasoning here is that I don't have Gala Alex, I don't have Gala Cerise. The more Galas that I skip, the higher value when I eventually come back to a Gala, or the more likely I am to get something that's pretty good. So that's kind of my plan, and maybe there will be a Platinum showcase for Gala Adventures in the future, which is where you get a random Gala that's on focus at 5-star. So that's kind of my plan right now. I think I'm going to skip. I don't really need Gala Mars. Having said that, let's take a look at Gala Mars' kit, because this is a really powerful flame dragon. So let's read the description first. A dragon famed for being the strongest in history. 100 kingdoms were raised by his fires, which is why humans dubbed him the Blaze Worm. He later forged a pact with Leonidas and allowed himself to be twisted by the power of alchemy. Interesting that Mars allowed himself to be twisted. Didn't know that. Skills are Alchemical Hellfire, deals flame damage to enemies directly ahead, draws them toward the user, and increases the user's strength by 20% for 20 seconds. Great combination of effects. Deals damage, gives you a substantial and long-lasting buff, and the icing on the cake is it's possible to charge the skill gauge by attacking and use it up to twice during one shapeshift. So you're looking at a 40% buff that lasts, somewhere between 20 and maybe 15 seconds. Or like total, you're going to have at least a 20% buff for probably like 25 seconds or so. But while it's stacked, it's a 40%. That's a large buff. And you get the benefit of the buff on the second use of the skill, which is kind of nice. There's a more important reason, though, I think that Mars is quite strong, and that's the ability. So first ability is Flame Strength 2, and HP 50% equals Strength plus 20%. So just at base, if the user is Flame, you're going to get 70% Strength. And if your HP is 50% or above, which isn't that hard to maintain in most content, you're going to get an additional 20% Strength. So this is practically speaking a 90% Strength dragon, which is pretty far beyond the strongest dragons that we've had in the past. Even when we've gotten Strength heavy dragons, they've only gone up to 80%, like Daikokuten or Garland. They've gone up to 80%, and usually a large amount of that, like 25% or 30%, is conditional on some kind of somewhat hard to meet clause. Like for Daikokuten, you need to be comboing. For Garland, you can't get knocked down. It's not impossible to meet, but it's a little bit hard to meet. And like Fatalis is another example where you lose your ability to easily shapeshift, because if you do, you'll get Curse, unless you have some way to work around that, like having Curse Res or Affliction Guard or getting blinded or something. So I think the drawback here of only needing HP 50% or above is a lot less severe, which makes this a really strong dragon. But then the second ability is something else that a lot of dragons struggle with, and I think this also makes Gala Mars quite good. Ending shapeshift equals skill gauges plus 100%. If the user is flame, fills 100% of skill gauges when the user's shapeshift is undone. That is super nice because one of the biggest problems with dragon transformation and why a lot of people see transforming into dragon as kind of a DPS loss for many characters is that when you come out of your dragon form, while you were a dragon, you weren't able to charge any of your skills. So especially for characters who rely on like affliction uptime, like you want to maintain burn, for example, or other types of debilitating effects, you're losing that ability while you're in your dragon form. But in any case, just a lot of characters, a lot of their damage comes from the skills they're doing. So it's a shame to feel like you're sacrificing that when you become a dragon and you're stuck as a dragon for some amount of time. I think with Gala Mars, they've finally designed a dragon where it feels very rewarding to transform. And I say finally, but obviously there are some dragons like this that you get a really satisfying payout from. I think of like Leviathan or Arctos that have excellent dragon forms and can apply really nice debilitating afflictions on the enemy. Or even Popstar Siren, who, not a good dragon form, but has kind of like the similar two-use skill that buffs the entire team. But Gala Mars feels like a very good dragon, very complete dragon. I don't think it's necessary right now. There's not a lot of particularly hard wind content, although Volk is still a hard trial for many people. Master High Midgard Stormer is a hard trial for many people. So if you're trying to break into that content, or let's say you're brand new to the game, like picking this up as a single copy is probably a very good investment. It's probably a fine dragon on Marth or Yuden, and eventually you could worry about max unbinding it as you obtain Sunlight Stones. As a later game player, I've tapped out all the free Sunlight Stones in the game. There's not much else I can do. If I get this, it's not going to be easy for me to max unbind, and I already have max unbound flame dragons like Apollo, Arctos, Konohana Sakuya, Prometheus, etc. So for me, this is a little bit too steep a price to pay for a somewhat marginal benefit on wind content that I already don't have a big problem with. So I don't think it's worth it for me to go for this here. And the other factor is I like dragons, but I've never really been super enticed by dragons. That's probably been one of the areas that I'm most limited in terms of my power level, and maybe why, especially early on with some of the end game, I wasn't really on the frontier of clearing it, is I never went out of my way to try invest in dragons too much compared to adventurers. So for me, my preference is like, I want to summon for characters that I like. Nothing about Mars I really love. But having said that, one thing that makes me happy is apparently there are a lot of people who play this game that just think dragons are awesome and dragons are cool. And so I've seen several people who just like want Mars because it's a really sweet dragon and a cool alchemical dragon. So I think that they might have struck a chord with this Gala. Like, this could be a very good potential thing, and if this is something you want to see continue, then go for summoning on the Gala. I don't think that should that this should stop you in any way, the fact that I'm probably not going to pull on this. One thing to note, though, is that you do have time. This lasts until April 30th, which is when we should find out about Part 2 of Fire Emblem, or the second event, rather, which I think now has a name, Kindred Ties. So you don't have to pull on this the first day or immediately. Having this dragon, Gala Mars, in your pocket is probably not going to do anything for you. Maybe you can max and bind it immediately, but even then, there's no need to rush, I feel. So do wait if you're interested at all in Fire Emblem characters until we see what banner or banners are associated with Part 2, or the second event, I should say, the new event, Kindred Ties, where we're getting our Sharina. A little bit on Kindred Ties, there were some teasers on Twitter, and I guess I will try overlay those right now if I can. So for Kindred Ties, I forgot to mention this, but we're having a new type of battle called Coliseum battles. It looks sweet. There's actually some artwork of Yuden fighting against Naveed, and Naveed has the enemy cursor underneath him, like the targeting reticle, which means that maybe this is a mode where we actually fight other adventurers, which would be kind of awesome. I don't know if that means PvP. I kind of doubt it because it describes the mode as facing off against waves of enemies, but you never know. It could be a PvE mode where you compete with others to try to clear the most enemies you can. Hopefully, though, it's just a wave-based mode with more interesting bosses because they're taking some of the adventurers and making them boss characters. And they also showed Leia and Cerise in the artwork. Leia is a gladiator-type character. She's fought in the Apollonian Coliseum, so maybe they'll make some reference to that. That would be kind of sweet. I'm really excited about new modes in general, but honestly, my hopes are not too high for this because I could see this just being sort of like the Repel the Empire battles that are already in the old Fire Emblem event, which is basically just successive waves of enemies spawn around you. But if there's any map elements to this, I mean, I think it could be kind of fun. One of the things I've always wanted is a game mode where you get the gear while you're playing the mode. So like you open a treasure chest and at the end of that wave, you can use whatever loot you've collected to kit out your adventure with better gear. So like maybe there's some weapon that drops from the chest or some wyrmprint, and in the mode, you can only use the gear that you've collected along the way. Something like that is honestly like my dream mode, because it would kind of put everyone on an equal playing field and be more skill-based and less based on just the gear that you have. And it would be fun to like climb the floors and beat different bosses to get different types of gear. I think that would be sweet, but I don't know that the Coliseum is really going to fulfill that. Having said that, I'm optimistic. I think just the fact that they showed that Naveed versus Yuden has my curiosity piqued. So the second thing they announced is that defensive battles are going to be returning for the new event, and they're going to have co-op this time, and there's an artillery barrage skill. So if you're bummed out about co-op not being in the rerun, perhaps what they're trying to do here is just concentrate the player base on the second event. I'm looking forward to that. It is happening before the first event ends, so be aware of that. It's going to happen on April 30th, I believe, depending on your time zone. So look out for that. That's going to be fun. That's the one where we're getting our free Sharena. Anyway, that's enough about the next Fire Emblem event. Let's move on to Ciella's Wrath. So here's the in-game announcement, and in-game we found out that Ciella's Wrath will be coming out on April 28th, or depending on your time zone, that could be April 27th. So Ciella says, "The Agito despair before this cruel reality. The Agito despair before putrid deception. The Agito despair before false salvation. With a malicious sneer, the wings of contempt thrust those who professed false justice into the depths of misery and anguish. These wings that laugh derisively at such despair have a name, and that name is Ciella." So Ciella seems sweet. Looks like her issue with the Ilian faith is that she believes it to be sort of like a false faith, doesn't believe in its promise of salvation, and maybe takes issue with the injustices of the world, and maybe sees that when she mentions cruel reality as evidence that there's something wrong with the Ilian belief system and that it's sort of a deception or a way of controlling people. They mentioned the wings here, and so she mentioned some of this, I think, in her Agito battle footage, which I will try put up on the screen now. But in terms of Ciella's battle, it sounds like maybe she'll transform into some type of winged enemy, like a bat, perhaps. We don't know that yet. In the battle footage that we got on the Twitter, it's just the standard difficulty, which means she's typically not going to transform. We see Victor, we see Tobias, Luis, and Lowen. Maybe that could mean something about Mana Spiral, but it's not guaranteed for sure. And we see two of the abilities, the two Agito abilities that Ciella has. One of them is called Vulnerability, and it looks like it can stack. And I think it's not obvious, but it seems like based on the name, maybe you take more damage. And then her other one is basically a veil that she can activate where she becomes invisible. And if you notice, when she gets that veil up, she cures herself of debuffs and afflictions. You can see in the gameplay footage that she can get poisoned, at the very least, on standard difficulty. And she has a lot of arrow-based attacks, including these rebounding arrows that bounce around the arena, which might make it kind of hard to dodge. That could be kind of fun. It looks like something similar to what's in Veronica's trial with her orbs. And she also has this really sweet move at the end of the video called Frigid Beam, where it even shows the direction it's going to rotate in, and it's just like this arena-wide freezing attack. So I'm pretty hyped for Ciella. I think there's a lot of potential in the little bit that they showed, and who knows what she'll be like when she transforms. Maybe they'll actually mix it up, because they made Kayan so similar to Volk after transformation with the swipe moves and the dashes that I could see them mixing it up to great success here. Just because Kayan was similar to Volk doesn't mean that Ciella has to be the same way. Like when Hilda's trial came out for the first time, it had so many mechanics that were similar to High Midgard Stormer, right? We had a move that was like a red marker where we had to group up. We had purple markers where we had to spread out. These might have seemed at the time like every High Dragon trial would include them. But then we got High Mercury's trial, and High Mercury's trial didn't really have any move like those. So I think that they could really surprise us here. Part 2 might not just be fighting the same type of boss again, and especially if she's like a winged boss, maybe there's some more mobility mechanics they can introduce. I'm pretty happy about what I saw in that footage, and I'm looking forward to it. So last thing on the notification page here, they do mention the 6-star Agito weapons you can craft from beating Ciella. Also, they mentioned something quite interesting. Difficulty levels for Ciella's Wrath, so levels plural, and tier 2 and higher enhancements for Agito weapons will be added in the future. So I think this is the first time they've confirmed multiple difficulty levels will be added. So not just a master difficulty, but potentially something harder or higher than that. And then they say tier 2 and higher enhancements for Agito weapons will be added in the future. So maybe there's other types of enhancements like weapon augments that they could be referring to, but the way this is phrased suggests a tier 3 of Agito weapons. I don't know that there's any other way to read that, but the fact that enhancements is plural, tier 2 and higher enhancements, I don't know, does that mean tier 4? Maybe it's just the sentence construction. It could be a localization thing. There's no guarantee on that one for sure. And it looks like we are low battery here, so we've got to wrap up. We've been talking now for quite a while just about this little bit of news. So let's get to the version update, and then I'll talk about the mana spirals very briefly. So the next version update is happening around the time that, well, actually a little bit earlier than Ciella's Wrath coming out. So this should be available this weekend. In terms of the content of this update, of course, we're getting our tenfold summon voucher, which is awesome. We'll be able to see mana spirals in the 2D display. That should be pretty convenient, and honestly, I might switch to this. I like seeing the little icons there, and the mana spiral page does take a while to load. And sorry, I said spiral, but this is for all types of mana circles, not just the spiral. New retry feature, this is fantastic. So instead of having to go back out of the quest and restart it and losing your helper, for instance, you can just retry from within the quest in solo play and it'll restart immediately. And in co-op, you actually start a vote. And that's great if you're with a group that you know, and you know that if somebody dies, you want to restart, for example. And even in a public group, like if it doesn't seem to you that y'all are going to be able to clear, but you were happy with the performance of the group, you want to stay together, then this is a really nice feature. So that's very welcome. It's something we requested for a long time. New co-op room conditions for mentoring. So they're going to add find a mentor, find players to mentor. I don't love the mentor system. It feels exploitative to me, so that's why I have not really participated in the mentor system. There's these like mentor hunter people that like shark for people to mentor. So I don't love it. I still feel like I would like to see it implemented in a slightly different way. So I don't participate in the mentor system, but if you do, hopefully that helps you. Team history feature added to co-op. This is very nice. I still want more team slots, but being able to use the same team as your history is helpful because now with our backline characters' co-abilities and chain co-abilities applying to our main character, it's more relevant that we actually care about which 3 characters we have in the back. So I do like this feature. Some Void Battle quests will be always available. This is a big one. Void Battles seem to be a big source of confusion to those first starting the game, and rightfully so. At this point, there are so many different Void Battle quests, but very few of them are actually relevant to your long-term progress. So they're going to make these types of Void Battles permanently available. Shroom Strike, Ghost Strike, Hermit Strike, Golem Strike, Catoblepas Strike, Phantom Strike, and Manticore Strike quests. So everything through the Manticore difficulty, and the ones that will rotate here are essentially the Void Dragons, which means Zephyr, Agni, Poseidon, Jeanne d'Arc, and Nidhogg, and the Void Chimera, which is the Volcanic Chimera, Ebon Chimera, and the new Wind Chimera. So only those will actually rotate. Everything else is going to be available every day. And you can use skip tickets, which is awesome. So if you are brand new and you're super confused about Void Battles and somehow you've made it this far in this video, what I want to say about these Void Battles is among these that are available all the time, the Manticore ones, especially the ones that let you craft shadow weapons, flame weapons, or wind weapons are the most relevant. Like, these are the ones that you wouldn't feel bad doing those regularly until you craft weapons from them, because those are prerequisites for Chimera weapons. The Shroom Strike, Ghost Strike, Hermit Strike, Golem, Catoblepas, okay, but don't have to do them all the time. The Phantom Strike will give you weapons that help you beat the Chimera bosses. And with the Manticores, those all have a mechanic called Fury, where you can't reduce their overdrive gauge on the Manticores unless you have a Fury Penetrator weapon. It's honestly not too big of a deal to just fight them while they're in overdrive, but if that is of concern to you, then some of these easier strikes have weapons that can help you. And these easier strikes also have weapons that will help you beat the Void Dragon bosses, like Void Zephyr, etc. If you've made it through the latest chapter of the story, chapter 13, it actually has tutorials that explain a lot of this a little bit better now, where it tells you specifically which of these Shroom Strikes and Ghost Strikes, Hermit Strike, Golem Strike, etc. that you want to do to face off against that specific Void Dragon boss. So I think this is only the first step in their cleanup. They've mentioned in the past that they're going to clean up crafting, and I think it's very, very needed. We'll see how simplified they're able to get it, but a lot of the weapons from these don't remain relevant in the long term. So that's why I say that shouldn't be a place that you're spending a lot of time or resources. So other changes, they're going to prompt you to link your Nintendo account. This is kind of a big one. Max level for rupee mines and elemental altars will be raised to 40. I'm pretty excited about that. Maybe they'll actually use tier 4 orbs now, and maybe they'll use more rainbow orbs to get those to level 40. But that's going to be a straight up stat increase on all adventurers because everybody has an element. Besides that, balance adjustments. So make adjustments to situations where adventurers take damage from obstacles and are pushed backward or have their movement interrupted by knockback. Reduce the distance adventurers are pushed backwards, or reduce the amount of disruption time. The backwards push will be changed to knockback. Some obstacles will no longer cause knockback, like falling tree obstacles. Adventurers that power up their Force Strike were opening treasure chests with their power up Force Strike. Okay. Not really super relevant, and some issues fixed. Yeah. The only thing I have to say about the knockback is I hope that works on the orbs in Kayan, because on auto battle, your ranged characters just sit in those orbs and get buffeted by them repeatedly to where they often can't do anything and just get stuck, especially if Grace's shields are down. So that is it for the version update. Last thing in this video, let's go back to the Mana Spirals. really, all of these mana spirals ended up being pretty respectable. Marth is a new meta choice for hard wind content like like Volk and like High Midgard Stormer. Pretty cool adventurer, just good modifiers, good abilities, all around a good investment if you are having trouble with those quests. Fjorm has reclaimed her title as being able to cheese Hybernhilda's Trial very easily, so against that content, 4 Fjorms can very quickly dispatch either Expert or Master difficulty Hybernhilda, so she is back in the limelight being able to do that. Veronica, similarly, can do some excellent work against Expert and Master High Jupiter's Trial. If you haven't finished crafting weapons or finished your Fafnir from those trials, Veronica is a fine character in order to take that on. Again, just like with Fjorm, she can win in like 15 to 30 seconds, and a quadruple team comp of all Veronicas is pretty powerful. And then finally, Alphonse. Still a welfare character, still the weakest of the bunch, but he has rocketed up as one of the strongest light DPS in the game right now. I don't expect that to remain the case just because no other light characters right now have access to a mana spiral, but for the time being, he does have a little bit of a role to play as a particularly strong light DPS. Could be good in some of your light solo teams if you have the resources to invest in Alphonse. But honestly, Mana Spiral is such a big investment that I prefer not to do it unless I have to. And so in this case, I would say Alphonse is a pretty easy skip among these. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've continued enjoying the Fire Emblem rerun and are excited for the content that's coming out this coming week in Dragalia Lost. I'm really looking forward to the second event. It's not a part 2, I should say. It is an actual proper new event. Maybe similar in some ways, like the defensive battles coming back, but the map should be new. The content itself should be new, so I'm really looking forward to that. I think that this whole Fire Emblem rerun has all been an appetizer for what's to come. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Gala Dragons and the Gala Showcase potentially happening every month. Are you hyped about Gala Mars? Are you actually going to pull for him? I'm very curious to hear what y'all have to say. Otherwise, everyone, that is going to do it for this video. So thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.